Ortho Clinical Diagnostics recently announcing it is bringing an automated blood test for coronavirus to the market. It says in a matter of weeks, the testing kit detects antibodies for COVID-19 that can be used to detect immune response to that virus. Joining us right now on the phone is the company's CEO, Chris Smith, the company backed by the Carlyle Group and others. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us about this particular breakthrough and how quickly you think it can get rolled out.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. It's good to be with you this morning. And obviously, first of all, I just want to thank all the healthcare professionals as well as the Ortho Clinical teammates that are out there on the front lines every day helping to protect and treat patients. But at Ortho, our mission is really about improving and saving lives and has been a leader in the diagnostics field around infectious diseases for over 35 years. And we see this just as another step in our company journey. So we're really doing our best on this COVID crisis just to be one part of the overall solution. But when you think about this test, the Ortho COVID-19 serology antibody test is really the first test released by a global diagnostic company that has a large national install base of blood analyzers that are already in hospitals and labs. So it gives us the ability to be able to scale and detect antibodies immunity of COVID-19 virus in patients. So just as an example, we would be in over 1,000 hospitals and labs. And given the ability to scale quickly, this antibody test will give us it'll be critical in determining the country's approach to reopening markets and safely returning employees back to work.
Well,
and then in addition,
Chris, one of the questions I have, though, about that in terms though of the speed and rapidity of this is a blood test. This is not a swab.
This is a blood test.
And so
correct.
There's a couple of things that have to break our way here. First is we got to figure out whether these antibodies actually do protect people and how long they protect people. Right? We don't know that at the moment.
Well, we do, and we're learning obviously more about this disease every day. As you look at these tests, the important thing is going to be things around specificity and sensitivity. And so if you can get the sensitivity high, and candidly in our early work that we submitted, we're above 99%. It really allows you to really understand whether a person has immunity or not. And that's what's going to be key. Now, the other thing I think that's interesting in this process is that you need to have a high throughput, or in our case, it's an automated analyzer that can test up to 3,500 samples a day. So when you take that across 1,000 hospitals and labs across the country, you can move pretty quick. And that's really what our goal is in this. And so we're just in the process of starting to introduce it and move in production. We'll make several 100,000 kits by the end of the month. And as we move into May, we'll be making a couple million kits per week. And we believe that will be really one of these steps to helping the healthcare workers as well as patients understand, have they been even exposed to the virus? Because there's many people who have been exposed but have not had symptoms. But this test will tell you if you've built up antibodies to the virus.
Hey, Chris, two questions on this. One is, what happens if the virus mutates? Would those antibodies necessarily protect the person anymore? And second of all, we had Dr. Scott Gottlieb on the show earlier this morning. He said that in children, a lot of times, even if they've been exposed, they may not have built up enough immunity to be able to say that they wouldn't be infected again. Yeah,
thanks, Becky. Obviously, we're learning more. And I think one of the keys through this is for us to continue to work closely with our KOLs as they're continuing to do deep research. I think one of the decisions is we brought out what's called a total antibody test as our first test. So rather than just focusing on IgG, which is the antibody that comes later in the disease, it actually picks up IgM as well, which comes earlier. So our hope is that we see that even in children. Now, candidly, we're just starting to roll this out. So I think we're all going to learn, but we're working really closely with the FDA on this. They've been, I think, fantastic in working with diagnostic companies to ensure that we can get tests out on the market. But I keep coming back to, I think if companies you're seeing this high level of sensitivity and specificity in the test, then you have confidence in the reliability. And I think that was the problem that we saw over the last couple of days in the UK and why those tests ended up not being used. And so that's been really the charter of our team. And if you look at the history, one of the first companies to bring HIV to the market, the first company for hepatitis C, it's really been that ability to nail those high specificity and sensitivities. And I think that's what the key is going to be, and that's what we're hearing also from the FDA is important.
Chris, the other question I want to ask, though, is going back to this being a blood test, it obviously takes time. It takes time to take people's blood. It's not something that can be done I don't think, and you can tell me through a drive-through, the way we're doing coronavirus testing right now, maybe it can be. But in terms of, it's very impressive to hear how quickly some of these things could get rolled out. But 3,500 a day, or even getting up to much higher numbers, it'll still take a lot of time. Not only if it's just used in this country, but if it's going to be used globally.
Yeah, so I think two things. On the 3,500 a day, that's per analyzer. So when you have well over 1,600 of these, we believe we can do upwards to 4 to 5 million tests a day. But you are right; it's not a drive-through. So this is very different than just taking a drop of blood. It actually uses a tube of blood, and that we also think that helps drive some of that sensitivity and specificity. But you would have to kind of go through that process. And so what we think is the industry is really working together. This isn't just about ortho. We're the first ones to bring this kind of large-scale, highly automated test to the market, but it's going to be important that all the diagnostic companies, because what you see is that analyzers are in hospitals and clinics across the country. So I think you're going to have to do the blood drop, use a blood drop like some of these point-of-care tests, but I think you're also going to have tests like ours to be able to test. Think about that. The hospital workers have the ability that already have an analyzer in the hospital. They can test all those workers quickly and understand if they've already built up immunity to the disease. So it's just one step in the journey that I think that the company's going to have to do.